It is 6 o'clock, and I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I have two quick updates before we get into our roll call. Mayor Brockett is not feeling well, and he is joining us remotely tonight, so I'll be facilitating the meeting. And second, Councilmember Weiner is out tonight observing the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah. And that is all of the brief updates before roll call. So, Ms. Elisha, would you please call out the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll start tonight's roll call as usual with Councilmember Adams.
Present.
Benjamin.
Present.
Mayor Brockett.
Present remotely.
Feel better, sir. Councilmember Folkerts.
Present.
Marquis.
Present.
Shuhard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Present.
Councilmember Wallach.
Here.
And Councilmember Weiner is absent. Mayor Pro Tem, we have our quorum.
Thank you so much. And the first thing tonight is there's a proposal to amend the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, unanimous, thank you. And we will have two declarations tonight, one for the 80th anniversary of the Museum of Boulder and one for Indigenous Peoples Day. Councilmember Wallach will now present the Museum of Boulder declaration. And I believe we have Chris Tyler from the Museum of Boulder here to receive the declaration. Chris, would you please join? Oh, no, oh, sorry, it's Juliet Barsh. Thank you. Would you please join Councilmember Wallach in front of the dais?
On? Nope. Still no? Oh, there we go. All right. Boulder History Month, October 2024. The City of Boulder proudly celebrates the 80th anniversary of the Boulder Historical Society, Inc., now known as the Museum of Boulder. Since its establishment on October 10, 1944, the museum has been instrumental in preserving and sharing the rich history of our community. Over the past 8 decades, the museum has diligently worked to safeguard the stories, artifacts, and heritage that shape Boulder Valley. Its efforts have provided invaluable educational resources and fostered engagement for both residents and visitors. To honor this significant milestone, the City of Boulder proclaims October 2024 as Boulder History Month. This month-long celebration will recognize the Boulder Historical Society's contributions to deepening our understanding and appreciation of local history. The community is encouraged to participate in various events and programs designed to explore Boulder's past, connect with our roots, and enrich our shared identity. We invite all Boulder Valley residents to join in the festivities, including visiting 3 notable exhibitions at the Museum of Boulder: the award-winning Proclaiming Colorado's Black History, On the Move, Keeping History Alive at the Museum of Boulder, and the captivating Boulder Experience Gallery. The museum's dedication to education, preservation, inclusion, and community engagement is commendable. Therefore, we, the City Council of the City of Boulder, Colorado, declare October 2024 as Boulder History Month and encourage all Boulder residents to join us in honoring the 80th anniversary of the Museum of Boulder.
Thank you, Councilman Wallach. My name is Juliet Leon Barch, and I am the Director of Marketing and Development at the Museum of Boulder. And I'm here this evening on behalf of Christopher R. Taylor, who is our new Executive Director, who is also not feeling well this evening. So it is my honor to receive this proclamation And we appreciate the City Council and Mayor Aaron Brockett and all of your support in recognizing the importance of our preserving Boulder's history. This is our 80th year of being the Museum of Boulder as the doing business as the Museum of Boulder, but we are actually the Boulder Historical Society. Chris had a long speech, but instead I'm just going to highlight how thrilled we are that October is Boulder History Month in perpetuity, and we will be celebrating so much over the next 4 weeks at the museum. If you haven't been by for a while, we're beginning Free Fridays starting tomorrow, hoping that there'll be a line down the street. Maybe not, but every Friday during the month of October is free admission. We have the incredible Proclaiming Colorado's Black History exhibit that actually will have tour guides to take you through the exhibit so you get a thorough understanding of its creation and its meaning. And we also have a Native American speaker series, which we're thrilled that the next proclamation tonight will be given to Geraldine, who is speaking on that series. A few other things. We have our 80th anniversary celebration this Saturday night at the museum from 6 until 8:30 p.m. And we will have historical figures, Martha Maxwell, Dr. Kellogg from Kellogg Cornflakes, and also the founder of the Sanitarium, thus Mount Sanitas, and also, let's see, who's the third one? A.A. Paddock, who was the founder of the Daily Camera, and also the Boulder Historical Society. So we're not exhuming them, so don't worry, but we will be having actors impersonating those historical figures. So I just encourage all of you to come to the Museum of Boulder and see what's fresh and new. We are very dedicated to preserving Boulder's history, and not only all of the past history, but looking towards the future. So thank you for this honor tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone with the Museum of Boulder for being here tonight. We really appreciate you bringing all these celebrations to the community. Councilmember Folkerts will now present the Indigenous Peoples Day Declaration, and I believe we have Geraldine Dakota from the Right Relationship Boulder group here to receive the declaration, and you may join Councilmember Folkerts in front of the dais.
Hi, Geraldine. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Geraldine is a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa in North Dakota and a founding member of Right Relationship Boulder County. Right Relationship Boulder. In 2024, Indigenous Peoples Day will be commemorated on Monday, October 14th, and Boulder City Council wants to recognize the importance of Indigenous Peoples Day resolution in our community. In 2016, the Human Relations Commission and community members drafted the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution, which was presented at the August 2nd, 2016 Boulder City Council meeting and adopted by the City of Boulder. Their collective and collaborative work in 2016 set a crucial foundation for the City of Boulder to reckon honestly with its past and for how we can honor, serve, and celebrate Indigenous nations, Indigenous communities, and Indigenous organizations in Boulder. The Boulder City Council believes it is critical to underscore key acknowledgments in the resolution, along with additional information we have learned implementing the resolution, which continues to guide the city's Indigenous-related work. Indigenous people in Boulder respect the interdependence of all humanity and living things and celebrate a vast and rich living tradition through ancestral recognition and diversity of knowledge and perspectives, including sustainable practices. Indigenous people in Boulder have, as in all parts of the Americas, endured centuries of cruelty, exploitation, and genocide. Boulder has benefited and continues to benefit directly from Indian removal practices that violated human rights, broke government treaties, and forced many people from their homeland. For example, in 1858, Chief Chief Arapaho, Niwot, Left Hand, and other Arapaho peoples told a party of gold seekers camped in what is now known as Boulder that they could not remain on indigenous land as defined by the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie. However, those men stayed. After gold was found west of Boulder in January 1859, many of those same gold seekers helped found Boulder Town Company on February 10, 1859, in violation of the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie. In August of 1864, nearly 100 Boulder County residents mobilized into Company D of the 3rd Colorado Cavalry of the United States Volunteers at Fort Chambers. This company of 100 men trained at the fort before participating in the Sand Creek Massacre on November 29, 1864, from which the Boulder troops enjoyed a hero's welcome upon their return. Among those killed in the massacre were women, children, elders, and chiefs, including Left Hand, Niwot, Cheyenne, and White Antelope. Today, Boulder is honored to be home of several prominent Native organizations, including the Native American Rights Fund, founded in 1970, which is the largest nonprofit law firm dedicated to asserting and defending the rights of Indian tribes, organizations, and individuals nationwide. The resolution also states the city acknowledges that those now living on these ancestral lands recognize that harm was done and acknowledge that we have a shared responsibility to forge a path forward to address the past and continuing harm to Indigenous people of this land. As we mark this year's Indigenous Peoples Day, we recognize that we must ensure ongoing work to acknowledge and address the past to help inspire education and reflection and initiate meaningful action to support Indigenous nations, communities, and organizations. This work is guided by the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution, the city's racial equity plan, guidance from American Indian tribal nations, agreements the city shares with tribal nations, the Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan, and engagement with Indigenous communities and Indigenous organizations in Boulder. Communities can learn more about the ongoing Indigenous-related projects through the city's website. We, the City Council of the City of Boulder, declare October 14th, 2024 as Indigenous Peoples Day and urge all community members to begin or continue the process of listening to Indigenous peoples, reflecting on the Indigenous presence in the Boulder Valley that has existed since time immemorial, and learning about the violent colonization of Indigenous lands. While the city is collaborating with tribal nations on several ongoing projects, we know we have more work to fulfill the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution and to help support Indigenous nations and Indigenous communities and organizations in Boulder. We value their guidance and the opportunity to listen and learn from all of them as we reckon with and address our past with hope that it will make our collective communities stronger and more resilient. Thank you for listening to that very long resolution, and I know you would like to say a few words.
I would. And it was long but beautiful. Thank you, Councilmember Folkerts. I appreciate that. And actually, it was beautifully said, but I want to emphasize a few things here. I'm honored, first of all, to receive this proclamation on behalf of Right Relationship Boulder. Our focus has always been implementing the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution and building relationships. And I see the handprint of so many members of our community in this resolution and this proclamation. Amy Zuckerman, who was head of the Human Relations Commission way back when, Ava Hamilton, who was so instrumental with some of the language, Carol Taylor, who helped us with the history, Paula Palmer, who's sitting here tonight, all on the ad hoc committee that helped build the resolution. So we have worked with and even pushed, I think, the city to connect with the Hanana'e, the Arapaho, and the Tististas, the Cheyenne, These are the peoples who lost their Boulder Valley home to the people of Boulder. Boulder has benefited for 165 years from the theft of native land. In the last 8 years since the resolution, the city has made efforts to involve displaced Indian tribes in their planning. I know there were MOUs that came before, but the actual city planning. Open Space and Mountain Parks has worked with the Arapaho and Cheyenne on a management plan for for the Fort Chambers property, which you heard talked about in the proclamation. And this is a start, but there's much to do to understand the system that encouraged the theft of tribes' lands. And we can think broadly about this. Land back can be a real thing. Former city manager Jane Brodegum remarked in a workshop with Open Space and Mountain Parks, Boulder has 46,000 acres of open space. Surely some of it can be returned to the people we stole it from. That represents the kind of shift in thinking that is needed. We can do more. Boulder's Indigenous Peoples Day resolution is about tribal nations and their members, in particular the Arapaho and Cheyenne, whose land Boulder occupies. Come to our Indigenous Peoples Day program at the Dairy Center on Sunday, October 13th, to learn about the work of local Native individuals and organizations, and to learn what Boulder, Longmont, and Broomfield are doing to build relationships with tribes and their citizens, and again, in particular, the Arapaho and the Cheyenne. Thank you, Boulder City Council, for this proclamation. Now it's time to figure out what the next steps are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, and thank you to everyone at Right Relationship Boulder for helping our community commemorate Indigenous Peoples Day and raise awareness of our city's history and present. I was so eager to get to our declarations and guests that I jumped ahead of reading the full motion to amend and to the agenda into the record. So before we go to our next item, I will read the amendments that we approved for tonight's agenda. Item 8A is a discussion on whether to hold the November 14th special meeting and joint meeting with the Planning Board in person, which was converted from a study session. And item 8B is a discussion on drafting a letter to Boulder County regarding their proposed 2025 budget cuts. Our city clerk will now go over the public participation guidelines and slides prior to the opening of our open comment.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And again, good evening, everyone, and we appreciate you being here. I'll now go over the public participation at City Council meeting guidelines. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and council, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement processes, please visit our website at bouldercolorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. Only one person at a time at the podium, unless an accommodation like an interpreter is required. Our remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No standing in or otherwise blocking the aisles. No participant shall stand or hold items such as signs or flags in a manner that would block the view of another person. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. We ask that you not affix items to the podium or dais or walls or other surfaces of the chamber. Signs, flags, or other items used to communicate must be held by one person when displayed. Obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. In-person participants are asked to refrain from expressing support or disagreement verbally or with sounds such as applause or snapping, with the exception of declarations. Traditionally, support is shown through American Sign Language applause or jazz hands. Again, thank you for listening and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And before we get started, I just want to say a couple words about how we'll move forward through this. First of all, I understand, and we hear it from people periodically, that 2 minutes is a really short time to speak on complex issues. It is even harder to make use of your 2 minutes when you're trying to talk over someone from the audience. So please do refrain in the audience from making audible noises during the meeting unless it's your turn to speak. Even speaking in a quiet voice can make it hard for others to tune into the speaker, especially for people who struggle to stay focused with distractions or who have hearing impairments. To make sure that we're all on the same page, I will issue one additional warning prior to taking a recess due to a disruption. If we need to take a second recess, I will ask that chambers be cleared. I hope to avoid the need for a recess this week, and using silent reactions rather than speaking out or clapping during open comment will help us avoid a recess. However, if the chamber is unable to follow the rules and disrupts the meetings, we will recess. And I will be stopping speakers at 2 minutes to ensure that everybody has equal time at the podium unless there's an equipment malfunction. If you have additional comments that don't fit into your 2 minutes, you may always email us. We do read them even if we don't have time to respond all the time. So thank you all for being here. Our first speaker will be Robert Smoke, followed by Evan Ravitz and Lynn Siegel.
My name's Rob Smoke. I live in Boulder, and I've lived here most of the time since 1986. And actually, I was here in 1981 as well. And I wanted, first of all, to just make a comment because 2 meetings ago, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, a person making open comment at the end of the speakers list who was doing it virtually talked about BDS, specifically divestment, and pointing out in a chart that the city has some investments that it could divest, and one that was displayed in, visually on the chart was Caterpillar bulldozers. And so after that, a few moments after that person was finished, one of our council members felt that council had made the right decision when it decided not to vote on whether or not to have a ceasefire. Well, those Caterpillar tractors, those Caterpillar bulldozers, I have a video of them bulldozing ambulances in Gaza. It's quite sad. And I don't think this idea of compartmentalizing the world and saying that, oh, we're separate, we have nothing to do with what's going on over there, I don't think it works. I don't think it works anymore for the people who live here. And I think overall, to stand on that or to say that that's sufficient policy given current circumstances is just a very poor choice. It's sort of a morally incoherent. I sometimes get upset and tell people they're being morally comatose, but I don't think that's the case here. I think you're just missing something that's vital. So free
All right.
Palestine.
Thank you so much for your time here.
Free Palestine, thank you.
Our next speaker is Evan Ravitz. And did I see that Lynn is online? Should we move her to the... Okay, so after Evan Ravitz, we'll have Patty Fuster Aguilera and Aaron Meshke.
The city says Gaza, and now the whole Mideast, isn't our business, but it is. From the 1.6 million of our taxes going to Israel, to the Israeli attacks on our sister city, Nablus, to the city's money invested in Caterpillar, which provides bulldozers to destroy thousands of Palestinian homes, roads, and olive trees, and buried U.S. protester Rachel Corrie alive. Here's another. I was part of the effort that got the much more responsible 2002 City Council to pass a resolution for Burma, demanding release of political prisoners, democracy, and the U.S. to allow local governments to boycott Burma. Just Google Boulder, Burma resolution. Now Israel's genocide provides cover for many other genocides. Genocide Watch lists 12 current genocidal emergencies, including Burma. Is your precious kissing up to drill baby drill and kill Israel kill King Polis worth killing our friends in Nablus, Burma, North Korea, Ethiopia, India, ad nauseum? After Russia invaded Ukraine, the US constantly talked about the rule of law. Not anymore, because we and our pal Israel are in violation of almost every international law of war and many US laws, including our law against arming those who starve people. Soon, all international law that came from World War II, our own laws, hell, the 10 Commandments, including thou shalt not kill, will be dead letter, all replaced with the one rule here: kiss up
Thank you,
and
Evan. Your
shit.
time is up. All right, our next speaker is Patty Fuster Aguilera, and then followed by Aaron Meshki and Ezzedine Alsai.
Hi, my name is Dr. Paddy Fuster Aguilera. I live and work in Boulder. You know me, you know us. We come every time to educate you. I'm a white cis woman with a PhD in mathematics. I'm a settler and an immigrant in this country at the same time. And I say settler the same way I say cis woman. Let's normalize this because there is no indigeneity without colonization. As a person born and raised in a white supremacist world, I do use those tools and work hard to unlearn them. We just had Hispanic Heritage Month, and I understand why this is insulting for many Latinas because the word Hispanic is a colonialist word. I understand why land acknowledgements and Indigenous Peoples' Day declarations can be insulting if they are empty and don't speak about the Palestinian struggle. As a mathematician and educator, I always tell my students the words about John Von Neumann, a famous mathematician, that it says, in mathematics, you don't understand things, you just get used to them. I tell them not to give up, to keep learning, to keep getting used to them, and there will be a moment in which it won't be so obscure, like how we learn to hold a pencil and first scribble, then draw and write. This is the work that we're doing here, thinking about Palestine, talking about Palestine, disrupting this council for Palestine. And we're not going to stop because I understand that learning and unlearning takes time. And I, as a white cis woman and a settler, I'm obligated to do that work. That does not mean that I agree with your silence because I think that you should do better because your silence is complicit to the killings of all the people and all the children that are assassinated by the IOF every day with the weapons that the US is sending paid with our taxes. While most of the media is distracted by Israel's indiscriminate bombing of Lebanon, another 100 people were killed in Gaza in the past day, and another 18 in airstrikes on the West Bank. Do better. Speak up, because speaking up is as bad as those who are defending Israel's
Thank you
genocide.
for your testimony. Your 2 minutes are up. Our next speaker is Aaron Meshki, followed by Ezzedine Alsai and James Duncan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Aaron Meshki. I live in Boulder and represent myself. Last week, the EPA lost a landmark case against the use of fluoride in drinking water. This case spanned 7 years, encountering a lot of government and agency meddling and roadblocks along the way, but a verdict was finally issued by a federal court on September 25th. The court deemed fluoridation a, quote, unreasonable risk to the health of children, and the EPA will be forced to regulate it as such. The court found that claims of safety made for over 75 years by the EPA, the American Dental Association, and the CDC were, in fact, not supported by evidence. I provided a handout with some of the notable statements, but wanted to read a couple pertinent paragraphs from the 184-page decision. The issue before this court is whether the plaintiffs have established by a preponderance of the evidence that the fluoridation of drinking water at levels typical in the United States poses an unreasonable risk of injury to the health of the public within the meaning of the amended Toxic Substances Control Act. For the reasons set forth below, the court so finds. Specifically, the court finds that fluoridation of water at a 0.7 milligrams per liter, the level presently considered optimal in the United States, and Boulder County as well, poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. The court finds there is an unreasonable risk of such injury, a risk sufficient to require the EPA to engage with a regulatory response. One thing the EPA cannot do, however, in the face of this court's finding, is to ignore that risk. End quote. As we await the EPA's rulemaking proceeding, policymakers like yourselves need to be asking if we should continue adding a neurotoxicant to our drinking water. Given the lengthy nature of this trial, it is likely that the EPA will also drag its feet in directing the removal of fluoride from drinking water, so that's why I'm coming to ask for local action now. Soon my family's drinking water will come from a well, so I will completely bypass this fluoride issue for myself, but I'm here because there are many in our community who do not know about the harmful nature of fluoride and cannot afford the extra steps to remove it, as well as other endocrine disrupting chemicals found in our
Thank you so much
water
for
supply.
coming
Thank you.
tonight. Our next speaker is Ezzedine Elsai, followed by James Duncan and Paul Coleman. All right, then let's do it. Is Ezzedine online by any chance?
I do not see it.
No. Okay. All right, then James Duncan, you are up, followed by Paul Coleman and Michelle Rodriguez.
I roll to the podium because that's the way a 3-year-old girl in Palestine who had her arms blown off, her leg blown off, that's the way she's going to be getting around. My name is James. Thank you for your service, Council. I appreciate your service incredibly. I also appreciate the situation that you're in. You're in between a rock and a hard place. The rock is the AIPAC and the Israeli lobby and the power of money and the corruption of this society. The hard place is the ground. That's the truth. That's life. That's where we're at. The AIPAC and the culture can be moved. The rock, the hard place, is not moved. So realize where you can your forces can go. This moment is fraught with irony. You know, we had the King Super Shooter coming out, where Eric Talley had no hesitation at stopping injustice. Right tonight, the Indigenous Peoples Day. Silas Sewell was a captain who had no hesitation about stopping injustice, right? They did the right thing. So what I want to do for you guys is to give you an out. You are allowed to say at any point, I cannot support this, even if you did, even if you were unsure. You can at any point say, this has gone too far. And while the best time to say that the past, it was earlier, the second best time to say that is now. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Next up, we have Paul Coleman, Michelle Rodriguez, and Helen Boone.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Spear and council members and Mayor Brockett, get well soon. I'm Paul Coleman. I live in the southern edge of Boulder in Shanahan Ridge, and I've lived in Boulder for about 40 of my last 72 years. Hopefully there'll be many more. As uncomfortable as I am with public speaking, I'm compelled to be here because of my concern about the climate crisis, punctuated this week by Hurricane Helene and the disaster in the southern Appalachian mountain communities. My hope is that every decision made by the city of Boulder is informed by our need to stop burning fossil fuels. This is the physical reality of the world we live in. all the solutions needed are available today. For instance, I've driven an EV since 2015. I would never go back to a fossil fuel powered car. At this point with my experience, I have to wonder why anyone would choose anything other than an electric vehicle. I spent Labor Day weekend at a family reunion in Grand Junction. So I drove from Boulder to Grand Junction in my 2019 Leaf, which has a range of 160 miles, which Grand Junction is further away than that, but it was fine. It was uneventful. I stopped in Frisco for 45 minutes. I stopped in Glenwood Springs for 30 minutes, and then I was in Grand Junction. My car has plenty of range with our charging infrastructure here in Colorado to get to anywhere I need to go in Colorado. The city should not hesitate to replace every internal combustion vehicle in the city fleets with an electric vehicle. The city budget should not be used towards the purchase of fossil fuels.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that. If you had anything more, you're welcome to email us there. Next up, Michelle Rodriguez, then Helen Boone and Paula Palmer.
Hi guys. First, I wanted to speak about the Community Council Forum. I was so honored to attend the other day. It was amazing and I felt included, and I don't think in my lifetime I've ever been surrounded by a bigger group of so many compassionate people with integrity and stuff. I wanted to say I was struck hard by a comment made by somebody else I aspire to be like, a community connector, Jamal. I didn't understand where he was going with it. He directed it at our Latin speaker that was representing our Latin community. It was something along the lines of, don't get it twisted, basically, about BIPOC. And I wanted to read, BIPOC identities include but are not limited to Asian, South Asian, or Asian American, Black, African, or a part of Africa's global diaspora, Brazilian or Cape Verdean, Latina, Latinx, Hispanic or Afro-Latino, multiracial, multi-ethnic, biracial, or mixed. I felt his comment was kind of exclusive of the Latin community. I also want to say that when you guys recess out and you go away based on the behavior that's in the courtroom, the activity has been really disruptive. It's almost like STG. Do you know what STG means? STG, Security Threat Group. And it does disrupt things. And it's disrupting everything. It was ridiculous that Sterling had to chase around with this group of women that come in so passionate about Palestine and keep them off the gentleman that was riding by on the bike they were going at it. It gets too crazy in this room, and it should be enforced because we are not legally allowed to protest like that. That's not in our things. And if it's disruptive and it's intentionally disruptive, then it's disruptive to everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up, we have Helen Boone and then Paula Palmer, and then we'll go to our virtual speakers. First one, Emily Reynolds.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Helen Boone. I've lived here for 2 years, and I've been closely following the City Streetlight Initiative passed a couple of years ago and being followed up with now. I also appreciate that y'all sought out community input on the color temperature of the lights. However, I have some concerns about the brightness of the street lights. As someone who prefers walking and public transportation, I believe that our city could do much more to make our streets feel safe at night and welcoming. As a young woman, it is often too dark for me to walk home comfortably at night. Even though I live right off of Pearl Street, I have to use my phone flashlight to kind of walk from the bus stop to my house, just so that cars can see me. And I don't love that. I think a study from Florida recently found that well-lit streets have decreased fatal pedestrian accidents by 54%. This is a powerful reminder how effective proper lighting can be in creating safer environments. When I'm driving in the dark, I worry constantly about hitting cyclists and pedestrians who don't have lights on. I also see drivers downtown using their brights, which is kind of blinding and can endanger other drivers. Currently, our city ordinance, it seems like based off my research, limits the luminance of these lights to about 900. And I think in most cities that average is about 1,000 to 10,000. This limitation significantly impacts how safe me and other pedestrians feel moving in the dark. Brighter streetlights can really enhance the sense of security for those of us who prefer walking. While studies show that more light doesn't always lead to a decrease in crime, it can improve our feeling of safety. When people feel secure, they are more likely to venture out on foot and take the bus, which reduces emissions from cars and ultimately benefits the community. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Paula Palmer, and then Emily Reynolds and Renee Bashore is online.
Good evening. My name is Paula Palmer. I'm a co-founder of Right Relationship Boulder. We formed this all-volunteer organization in 2017 to help the city implement the 2016 Indigenous Peoples Day resolution. Our first focus was to learn the history of the Arapaho people, who were forced out of the Boulder Valley when gold was discovered in 1858. We learned about a fort that settlers built in 1863, where Boulder men drilled and mustered and joined Colonel John Chivington's forces to carry out the Sand Creek Massacre. In 2018, the city's Open Space Department purchased the land where this fort, Fort Chambers, had stood. Right Relationship Boulder is advocating for the Fort Chambers site to be developed as a site of conscience. If you Google sites of conscience, you will find deeply moving stories of communities all around the world that have created sites of conscience in places where terrible violations of human rights have occurred. Many sites related to the civil rights movement in the South have been developed as sites of conscience. At these sites, the history of terrible events is told honestly, but it's not just about history. At these sites, communities are asking themselves to be honest about the ongoing impacts of historical violence and injustice, and they are committing to take reparative actions. For us in Boulder, this would mean asking what happened here after the Sand Creek Massacre. Who owns the land of the Boulder Valley today? And how do we continue to benefit from the removal of the Arapaho people? Where are the Arapaho people today? And how do they continue to suffer the consequences of what happened at Fort Chambers and Sand Creek? How can we as a community face up to these disparities? What actions might we take?
Thank you so much for being here. We'll now move over to our virtual commenters. First up, we have Emily Reynolds, then Renee Bashores, and then Laura Gonzalez.
Emily, your mic is open. You'll just want to press *6 to unmute.
Emily, are you able to speak? All right. Why don't we give Emily just a moment?
I've pressed *6 several times now.
Okay,
It finally
you're
worked.
good.
Emily Reynolds here. Good evening. I seriously question whether we should triple council pay. When open space, height limitations, blue line regulations, all the moves that brought you here were put into place, Steve Pomerantz reports that the situation was very different. Quote, in 1985, council members served as volunteers with no pay at all. Looking back, it's my observation that almost all of the many people I've served with in my 10 years on the council worked very hard, took their jobs very seriously, sacrificed their free time, and worked to include the citizens in the decisions. It was more of a calling than a job. End of quote. Steve continues, it's my observation that paying people to perform this vital community function has not improved performance. Quite the opposite. It's led to an inefficient process, less interest in what citizens have to say, and more soundbite-based decisions. So in our city manager style of local government, staff does the heavy lifting. Council should not be micromanaging every project. Does council warrant 3 times more money than they get now? I know the so-called progressives want to be able to have full-time jobs with council positions, but this is not good governance. The recent example of council overreach is serving 65 10,000ths of 1% of the traffic on Iris to the tune of 5, 6, 7 million in bike lanes. Does the city council represent you at all? I ask the citizens of Boulder, now that the city is hurting for funds foolishly spent on bad ideas like suing the FAA with no public input. Do we want to give them 3 times more money? Please, you be the judge and vote in November.
Thank you, Emily. Our next speaker is Renee Beshores, followed by Laura Gonzalez, and then Lynn Siegel.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
hello. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Renee Beshore, North Boulder resident. I'm here tonight to ask each of you for your help coming up with real solutions to address the rising crime and threats to safety that residents, businesses, and visitors in North Boulder are facing on a daily basis. As many of you know, the corner of Laramie and Broadway, which is also the entrance to Dakota Ridge, has become a hot spot for trespassing, littering, urinating in public, open drug use, and panhandling near moving traffic. And just yesterday at around 3:30 p.m., the fire and police departments responded to a call to extinguish a fire started in a barbecue grill at this location. Individuals who are clearly under the influence of drugs and alcohol started this fire, set up a banquet table, and looked like they were planning a party. This was merely blocks from the new day center, and this has become a regular occurrence most weekends since the day center opened. Additionally, for the first time, we are seeing panhandling on Laramie at the entrance of Dakota Ridge. This is especially concerning because of how dangerous that intersection is without having distraction of people panhandling. I'm not sure if Laramie is in the city or the county, but I'm wondering if anything can be done to stop the panhandling at that entrance, as it's very dangerous. I pointed out to Nuria how dangerous that area is with all the traffic coming from 2 different sides of Broadway. Another issue of great concern is people smoking meth at the bus stop on Lee Hill. There's been several reports of that in the last 3 weeks. And the members of North Boulder Alliance have put together a lot of time and effort to come up with suggestions, and I will list those now. We ask that there will be a light and a camera permanently at Laramie and Broadway. We want the land up here clearly marked what is county and what is city. Before any more money is being given to all roads for being the day center, we want a thorough audit to see what the impact of having the day center in North Boulder has affected the neighborhood. And we want a micro police station. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward
Thank you,
to—
Renee. Our next speaker is Laura Gonzalez, and then followed by Lynn Siegel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yes. First of all, I am here to applaud the most courageous member of the City Council, Taisha Adams. I am sure your ancestors are proud of you, and I'm also asking you to continue to even push harder about not just calling for a ceasefire, but also ending the occupation and ending the $1.6 million of our taxes, in addition to all of our relationships that we have that are violating international law. I recall that you mentioned justice over order. So please continue keeping that in mind and having conversations with your colleagues about that. Because if there is no justice, you will not have peace, and you will continue having what you call disorderly conduct. Again, settlers and colonizers get to define what violence and disrupting means, instead of you using our sacred rage to actually, that is very justified, so you can listen and do the actual reparations that you promised that you're committed to. that you would people who were enslaved in addition to indigenous people whose land you're standing on as a settler, because if you're not indigenous, no matter the color of your skin, you're a settler, and that is not a racist term. Mayor, you allowed a white settler to insult me as a bitch, and you didn't even do anything. And then you put on your website that you are trained in equity and all these things, but you couldn't do anything. So we have seen your racism at work. All of you are complicit into this. But here, I don't want to spend more time educating you on something that you think you're an expert on. I actually want to ask you to stop City Boulder relationships, cultural, economic, and political, with the state of Israel, because the ICJ recently ruled that it is indeed occupying Palestine, the West Bank specifically, which no one's talking about, but Tulkarem today was bombed. We are violating, as members of the Genocide and Geneva Convention, we are violating international law. The ICJ has ruled that we need to act accordingly and boycott culturally, economically, and politically. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Again, stop those $1.6 million, but I'm also
Thank you,
asking you
Laura.
to
You
stop
are
ties.
welcome to email us the rest of your comments. We really do read every email that comes in. So that is a way to get on our radar. So open comment. I'm sorry. We have one more speaker, Lynn Siegel.
Yay, the last word. Stephen Tebow is doing a project at 11th and Spruce, and Carrie Whitman is the person that's working on him for this. Now, on 425 Arapahoe, there was a house that went up for potential demolition, and so the Landmarks Board went there, and I went there to go through the site to see what we thought of demoing it or not. I think it's in great shape, and there was a fabulous tree there in the front on the left that I remarked on, and other people remarked on too, because it's beautiful pine tree. That was on Thursday last week. On Sunday, I went by. Oh, and they said, first of all, they said when I mentioned the tree and others mentioned the tree, they said, we're keeping the tree. On Sunday, I drove by on my bike. That tree is out, gone. Not a trace of it left, and 2 more trees. I called Marcy Cameron Gerwing, and she was shocked. So what's going on here with Stephen Tebow's Carrie Whitman and Chloe, her assistant, and telling us, and going out of their way, and Marcy admitted this, that tree was going to be kept. This is ridiculous. Something very deep in corruption is going on within the city, and most of it has to do with subsidies to developers, and they aren't paying the price. And we don't have money for our jail, and I'm trying to park my bike in front of the library, and there's chop shops there, a bed, and we're talking about beds at Marpa House. They're making an extra bedroom out of a dining room. Come on. They've done this tons at the East Campus already. There is a perpetuation of these things going on, and approval.
Thank you, Lynn. You're welcome to email us the rest of your comments. We will read them. And with that, our open comment is now closed. Thank you to all the speakers. I would first like to ask our city manager and city attorney if there is anything that you would like to say in response.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem, and thanks to everyone who takes the time to give us comments as always. I know that staff has followed up or will be following up with Emily to talk a little bit about street lighting, and we'll be continuing that conversation. I wanted to thank Renee for the visit. I had the opportunity to go to North Boulder and talk to some in our community up there. I just wanted to say I know that PD has been increasing patrols. We continue to be talking with our partners at All Roads. We are talking with our partners in the county, and just today I was talking to the county administrator. We will be looking at ways in which we can strengthen the ways in which the county and the city can join forces to address some of the concerns we have in that area. We're particularly concerned with fire and fire safety in that area as well. So we will be looking at that. I have been speaking with staff, and we will be looking at the possibility of moving a camera there. We have limited cameras. We move them depending on what our needs are across the city, but we certainly have been taking a look at that, and we will be adjusting as needed, but know that we are paying attention and we are working with our partners in that area. As we had heard from our partners at Right Relationship Boulder, there is a lot of interest with some of our some of what is going on at Fort Chambers. Sorry, all of a sudden, thank you, Evan. All of a sudden, it just fled my mind. I will say that we have been in concept plan, and the theme that staff and our tribal nation partners have been working on is heal the land, heal the people. During that sort of concept phase and community input phase, they received over 500 responses. And so they are currently in the design phase upcoming. That will also be something that you will hear about more, community will hear about more. So just stay tuned for more information on that. That is all I have.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, yes, Councilmember Marquis.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Fort Chamber? Is the Fort Chamber effort, is that county or is it city?
That is our effort with our tribal nation partners.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Adams.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I feel like I did make a request to get an update on the North Boulder day services expansion, because it had been, I think I did it at the 3-month mark. And so just want to lift that up again, as although it is helpful, and your comments were really helpful to know that there are movements related specifically to the camera, to signage. And I also, again, think that the escalations in crime and some of the other issues that were brought up are worthy of us having a fuller conversation. And, it would be wonderful to have Chief Redfern and the sheriff, if that's a thing that we can do, just recognizing that there seems to be a need for more collaboration and cooperation at the city and county level on this particular item. So I just wanted to make that request again sooner rather than later, because it's been months that this situation is happening and it continues to escalate. And I do think it's worth a 15-minute conversation to find out where we are, and to just get some more accountability around and shared expectations around when some of these changes will be made. So I just want to lift that up again as something that I'm hopeful that we can get on a microphone about. I also wanted to clarify a comment that was made around the business session that we had last week, and the comment around that one of the participants had made exclusionary comments about what was said. And actually, that's not what my understanding of that particular situation was. It was my understanding that Jamal was actually asking us not to exceptionalize any one group, racial and ethnically, across BIPOC continuum. So, and it was actually directed in response to something that Carla had said. Carla, who is an incredible leader of our Latino Business Chamber, for those who don't know, and she'd said something to the effect of, Latino businesses are the fastest growing businesses in our community, and we need to especially make sure that they are being served. And so it was my understanding that Jamal's comment was in response to, well, we don't want to exceptionalize any one group, but rather each group, Black, Latina, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Island, are worthy of equity and making sure that we have the resources to not only mitigate the bias and discrimination of the past and present, but also making sure moving forward. And I actually appreciated and I forgot the woman's name who leads our small business development center here. Anybody? Rachel. I want to thank her for clarifying in her response that, Latino businesses also need the linguistic and, translation and interpretation components, to which I will also contend that there are African business leaders who also do not have English as as another language. So even there, the linguistic needs are not specific to one ethnic group, that it is something that we need to be very mindful of, regardless of the size of any one of those groups. And just in general, I think that we need to move away from any oppression Olympics, is what I call it, where, well, this happened to me, well, this happened to me. I mean, hey, we all have some story if you dig back deep enough. And so I just wanted to clarify that, because I know that that was not his intention. And then lastly, thank you for lifting up the question about the Caterpillar bulldozer. Regardless of how you feel about the moral issues that are happening there, it was my understanding that the city of Boulder does have an environmental clause for some of our contracts. And just curious, again, how, from a legal perspective, how far that extends, because there is an ecocide happening over there as well, and any company that is involved and engaged in that should not be receiving our dollars. So I would request that we do look into that to make sure that no company that we are engaged with is in violation of the environmental clauses that we have in the books. And then lastly, as the Noblest Sister City representative, I want to thank those at the Noblest Boulder board and staff who were able to come to my home for dinner, along with other community members that were interested in continuing the conversation that I brought up last week. And there is the fundraiser for the health center and equipment. So if you're interested in donating to that, you can donate at bouldernoblest.org or Venmo BNSCP. And for those of you who are interested in other cultural events, formal and informal, please get in touch with us. We are identifying a film series, writing and poetry series, and other cultural events that will help to raise awareness of our shared humanity, and the need and opportunities for us to work more collaboratively together. So again, we hear you and are finding ways that, one, making sure that anything that we are doing is in line with the policies that we have on the books. And then lastly, there are opportunities to directly impact those those who are living in the Askar refugee camp, where they're in desperate need of medical supplies, as you can imagine. Thank you.
Can I offer a clarifier?
Thank you.
Yeah, just to
yes.
Taisha's point
Yep.
about the Day Service Center and wanting an update. Alicia published us on Monday the 30th, the CAC summary, and we have a homelessness program evaluation and policy discussion on December 12th as a study session. So I would imagine any and all questions pertaining to all of those services would be addressed probably in there as well, since that's coming up very shortly.
Okay. Well, that's 2 months away. So I feel like the issues are continuing to escalate. And so my concern would just be, waiting. One, how will this conversation, will it have the depth and breadth that it needs if it's a part of a larger conversation? And B, just waiting that long, I don't want the issues to escalate before we have got on the microphone about that. So I appreciate that, but just have concern about waiting 2 months. They've already been waiting months.
Certainly, council members, and we defer to CAC for that. We had talked about this at a previous CAC and had talked about it coming in December. If it is the will of council to bring it earlier, certainly that is something that we can talk about, but that is the will of CAC in scheduling.
Okay, thank you. I will make another request via CAC and look forward to talking about it on Monday.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you so much to everybody who came out to speak with us tonight. And I just want to remind folks too that even for things that we have decided not to weigh in on as a group, many of us do have office hours and are open to individual meetings and things as well. So if you ever want to get in a little bit deeper with us on any of the topics, you are very welcome to take advantage of those. And most of the time you can find that on our city websites, or just reach out to us via our phones that are posted on the city websites. Ms. Alicia, will you please take us into our next item?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Our next item on tonight's agenda is our consent agenda, and it consists of items 3A through 3F.
All right. I know the Council Employee Engagement Committee has a few words to say on item 3B, but before we get to that, does anyone have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Yes, yep. Then I will go to Councilmember Shuhard to talk a little bit about, item C.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have a few words to say about item C, performance evaluations. I am a member of the City Council Employee Committee, along with Mayor Pro Tem Spear, along with David Bell, who's our Chief Human Resources Officer. And just a quick backgrounder, the way our city is structured, we have 3 employees that report to City Council: Nuria, our City Manager; Teresa, our City Attorney; and Jeff Kahn, our Municipal Court Judge. And you can read in the packet that all 3 have achieved a rating of exceeds our expectations. And I just want to point out that that assessment comes from a comprehensive process that includes a 360-degree review of counselors, their peers, and staff. And so that assessment is a reflection of many people working all around the city. And it's an exercise that really highlights the talents, dedication, and teamwork of the 3 of them. I also want to recognize and thank David Bell, our Chief Human Resources Officer, who works mostly behind the scenes, and he's instrumental in the good working of the city, and he brought an incredible amount of rigor and perspective to this exercise as committees and councils come and go. David's there. So to conclude, and just in my own words, Nerissa, Teresa, and Jeff, and also David, thank you for your service, and here's to another year, another productive year, and we're lucky to have you.
Anything else? All right, I would just echo the thanks. It's really an honor to have you all working with us. And Judge Kahn, if you're listening online, you as well. Okay, I think then, Ms. Elisha, we are ready for our roll call vote on the consent agenda.
I didn't hear the motion or the first.
Oh,
or the
I'm so
second.
sorry.
I'm
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
thought maybe I
that's
missed
an important part to get to. So let me start by asking for a motion.
I move that we pass the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have our motion and our second then.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am. We'll start the roll call for the consent agenda items A through F tonight with Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhard.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
And Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
The consent agenda items 3A through 3F are hereby approved unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I believe we are ready then to move on to our next item.
Yes, ma'am. Our next item on tonight's agenda is our public hearings. We have one item, which is item 5A, and it is the consideration of the following items that are related to the 2025 budget. First on that list, we have the introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order published by title only, Ordinance 8660, which is adopting a budget for the city of Boulder. Item number 2 is the introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order published by title only, Ordinance 8661, which is establishing the 2024 City of Boulder property tax mill levies. Item number 3 is also the introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order published by title only, Ordinance 8662, and it is appropriating money to defray expenses and liabilities of the City of Boulder for the 2025 fiscal year. And last, our item number 4 is the consideration of a motion to order published by title only, and it is also introduced as Ordinance 8656, which is amending sections 3-8-3, which is based on the tax imposed on non-residential and residential development. And we have 2 other sections that are being amended, and those sections are for changing certain fees and taxes and setting forth those related details.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to our city manager, Nuria Rivera-Vandermeide.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. And Before I pass it on to our amazing finance budget team who have done extraordinary work with the budget, I just wanted to make a comment about the budget as we move forward. There's so much emphasis, right, that we put on this moment. It is the time that we get to make decisions and to really dig into it. And as I've been reflecting about that, I will say that I hope that you see that what you do really during the year is that you actually influence and you shape and you inform the budget throughout the entire year. The decisions that you make, the direction that you give us, and it's hard to say that because I have one of my colleagues who has the police song in my head about every decision you make and every direction you take and so forth. But it is true, right? We are watching you. It is true that every time that you make a decision, that informs the budget, right? It has budgetary impacts as we move forward. We hope that as you see the budget, you see yourselves reflected. Your council priorities are in there. The previous council priorities, as you look at CAN, that has budgetary ramifications, right? The conversations that we have about choices to move things faster, to move things in different directions, to engage more with community, all of those have budgetary ramifications. So throughout the entire year, the conversations that we have about our projects, about our priorities, those are constantly impacting the budget. So the moment we find ourselves now, I hope, is reflective of those conversations, of those decisions. So we hope that when you think about the budget, you don't just think of this moment, but rather that you really know that this is reflective of all those conversations and all that we hear from you throughout the year. And with that, I will pass it to Charlotte.
Thanks, Nuria. Good evening, council members. I'm Charlotte Husky, Budget Officer for the City of Boulder. Good to be here with you tonight. I'm going to give a very brief presentation, about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll turn to council questions before public hearing. We're excited to bring forward our first reading of the 2025 recommended budget to City Council this evening. We will go through a brief presentation and agenda of sharing our financial outlook and major revenue sources, provide a very high-level overview of the 2025 recommended budget. We provided a comprehensive overview to City Council during our September 12th study session, and then turn for council questions, public hearing, council discussion, and finally end this item with our proposed motion language. So looking first at our 2025 projected revenues, we shared earlier in the year during our May financial forecast as well as during our September 12th budget study session that we are continuing to project slow growth and uncertainty with our major revenue sources, sales and use tax and property tax. You can see that our 2025 forecast for revenues for the 2025 budget include a total of $492.5 million. Sales and use taxes is one of our major revenue sources that we've shared previously, comprising 37% of our total revenue forecast for 2025. We're continuing to see flattening sales and use tax growth through 2024, and we shared earlier at our study session that we are anticipating and estimating 2 to 2.5% growth in the out years through 2030. Property taxes comprise 12% of our revenue budget for 2025, and we shared additional information of the recent legislation that the state just passed, and we're estimating and will continue to revise these estimates as part of the 2026 budget development process, but are currently estimating less revenue than forecasted of about 1 to 3 million starting in 2026. Turning to our recommended budget overview, we shared previously during our study session that our operating budget makes up, the total operating budget for 2025 is $399.3 million across all funds in the organization. The budget direction for this year for the organization was to really focus on realignments of existing dollars and existing appropriation toward prioritized program outcomes. We also shared earlier that we have limited ongoing additional revenues, and so we performed limited ongoing operating increases within the operating budget. One of the things that we really looked to this year was utilizing one-time funds for strategic one-time investments, and so you'll see that reflected in the 2025 operating budget. Again, the majority of the increase within the operating budget itself is due to internal service charges and planned debt service. There are some examples here. Technology costs, fleet and equipment replacements, and facilities maintenance are a couple examples. Our total capital budget for the 2025 recommended budget is $190.2 million, and we're excited to be advancing some key community projects such as the East Boulder Community Center and Primos Park and Violet Bridge replacement within our 6-year CIP as some examples. We have focused on the 2025 budget development process. We are excited to be rounding out year 3 of budgeting for resilience and equity, where we've focused on developing our outcomes, measures, and targets inventory across the organization that are aligned to the sustainability, equity, and resilience framework. We focused on our 2025 budget engagement efforts for this year. We expanded our engagement efforts with the community connectors and residents. We're excited to continue that partnership for 2024 and 2025. We also expanded these efforts in 2025 with focusing on boards and commission engagement, as well as a citywide questionnaire that we performed that asked for feedback from all community members as aligned to the sustainability, equity, and resilience goal areas. We also focused on key council priorities that were identified earlier from council members in the 2024 April retreat, and I'll share on the next slide some examples as well as the citywide strategic plan and uplifting some of the priorities within the citywide strategic plan. Some of the council priorities that we are advancing within the 2025 recommended budget include $600,000 in one-time funding to support the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan update. We have $200,000 within the 2025 budget to support the small business support for economic resilience that specifically aims to bolster the economic vitality strategy in 2025, and $1.4 million for the University Hill Streetscape renovation project to invest in capital upgrades around the University Hill area, supporting the council priority of quality of life improvements and commercial area connections within the council priorities. Our citywide strategic plan alignment, we have uplifted and invested in moving forward some of the strategies that are included in the citywide strategic plan. These are some examples listed here. Strategy 5, enabling diverse individuals and families to live in Boulder. We have invested in additional and budgeted additional rental assistance and human services funding, for example, additional investments in affordable housing. Strategy 1, focusing on safety efforts to reduce community harm at critical locations. We're increasing the budget for the Office of Police Monitor and increasing investments in urban rangers and SAMPs as well. And Strategy 10, advancement toward 80% reduction in emissions. We're excited to be moving forward with the Western City Campus consolidation and efficiencies that will come with the consolidation, as well as efficiencies in building performance. Another example of investments that are included within the 2025 budget include the HOP bus electrification that advances this strategy within the citywide strategic plan. Looking at our capital improvement program across the 6-year CIP from 2025 to 2030, one of the things that we shared previously is the appropriation for the 6-year CIP can fluctuate from year to year. You see this on this graph, and this is really due to timing, funding, and scope of projects that are planned on a 6-year horizon. We are performing the decision making for the 2025 appropriation within the 2025 budget this evening, and that is advancing several projects across 19 funds and 8 departments supporting over 200 projects within the capital improvement program. And you can see specifically some of the major capital projects are associated with transportation and mobility, utilities and facilities and fleet for 2025 in particular. And finally, rounding out the presentation, we shared during our study session as well as the May financial forecast that we have significant unfunded and underfunded needs. The estimate that we shared during study session was about $380 million in operating as well as capital projects. And so this really reemphasizes the need for the long-term financial strategy effort, and we're excited to move forward with this effort. These are 4 components that comprise the long-term financial strategy, including establishing a long-term financial plan, exploring alternative funding mechanisms, defining core service levels, as well as developing a ballot measure strategy for 2025 and 2026. And we look forward to involving the Financial Strategy Committee as well as City Council early next year in this effort. Accidentally ended the show. 1 second. All right, so next steps for the 2025 budget calendar. We're now at the end of our 2025 budget development process. This evening, October 3rd is first reading, and October 17th is second reading for the 2025 recommended budget. Prior to ending the presentation and opening for council questions, we do want to just share some of the staff recommended changes that we shared to Hotline earlier this afternoon. That includes a clerical error, correcting a clerical error within the University Hill commercial district fund. This is correcting an error within the University Hill streetscape project, and so we are correcting this error within the 2025 budget and reducing the total recommended budget fund level from 1.5 million to 1.3 million. And I just want to emphasize that this does not change the scope or the intended funding level for this capital project. This is purely correcting a clerical error that is within the 2025 recommended budget. And then for council process, just as an overview, again, we requested during the study session that council submit changes to the 2025 recommended budget by September 23rd to include in the council packet. Financial Strategy Committee also requested specific trade-offs or funding identification as part of this process. And by the September 23rd deadline, we did not receive council budget proposals for amendment changes that had any fiscal impact. And just as a reminder, the goal is for this evening to have a final budget and appropriation number for adoption to enable us to have second reading and approval of the budget on October 17th. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I will open it up for any clarifying questions that folks have about the presentation. I see Councilmember Marquis.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you so much for answering all the interim questions that many of us have been sending you and looking for clarification, especially as a newer council member. My first question is a process question. When do we start looking at budget adjustments, and how does that communication come back to councils when we know that we have more or less and start thinking about shifting?
Thank you for the question. So our adjustment to base process occurs twice a year. The items come forward typically in the May-June timeframe to council for the adjustment to base 1. Our adjustment to base 2 will come forward to council this year in November and December time period.
Okay, thank you. And then my understanding is we're going to be looking at the long-term financial strategies. I think it's in April. I had asked when that was going to come up. How, if we start seeing that things are not going as we had hoped, how do we get notified that we have a budgetary problem if suddenly our sales tax start flattening or going down in a way that we're going to have to make faster shifts? What is that process?
We meet, I would say that our team, our office looks regularly and monitoring regularly with our major revenue sources and budget monitoring across the organization. So we look at that on a regular basis, and we also meet with the Financial Strategy Committee on a monthly basis. And so that is something that we would consider and bring forward if there's any significant update that we would need to share with council.
Okay, and then my final, well, probably not my final, but my last question for right now. I think we built this budget on the anticipation of a 15% minimum wage increase. And if we don't choose that specific number, at what point does the budget get changed to reflect that? Would that be by the 17th, or would it be?
Thank you for the question. So given the minimum wage discussion is next week, we would prefer to wait until council policy direction is performed, and we could come forward and potentially take a look, given council direction, potentially an ATB2. So that would be the potential process for that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councilmember Adams.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify for my colleagues that I had hoped to have made a request of budget adjustments, but based on the amount of time that we had to do it and just the lack of critical data in order for me to be able to propose anything. And this would be specific to businesses that would be disproportionately impacted by any minimum wage increase, as well as the individuals and families that would be impacted because we're not able to reach a living wage, which isn't even on the table. And so going through everything, I want to just thank our team for looking and helping, but the 68% of our budget being restricted makes it very difficult. And although I appreciate the move to budgeting with resilience and equity, many of the indicators are just 1 year. Many of those are outputs, not outcomes. And so even using that, we won't even be able to use that with fidelity for 3 more years. And so in light of that lag of performance data, I'm hopeful that we can come up with what is the stopgap around that, so that we are getting not program by program by program by program by program evaluation data, but something that is rolled up a little bit more. And I also, again, want to thank our colleagues at HHS for providing information at the programmatic level and how many individuals are impacted by the different investments. But again, we know that there's duplications there because that data isn't coded by individual or family, so there's duplication. So you don't really, it's not an accurate picture because you can't make that. So recognizing those limitations, I just recognize that these are limitations that we're going to continue to have until the budgeting with resilience and equity outcome information is robust enough to be able to make a decision. So I just want to say that I wish that I was able to. I haven't been able to. I'm still curious what $200,000 for raising awareness goes to for business, but just wanted to lift that up. Now, specific to the questions that I have, just for the long-term budget component, just wanting to lift up again the request of having conservation finance expertise in that group is going to be absolutely essential. And so more of a question and comment. I did have a question around the airport, and I noticed that there was a $5 million funding requested for that, and just was curious. I know that the city isn't taking any more grants for airports, but I am just curious, would there be a grant that would cover some of those prices, just again to uplift the choices and decisions that we're making, especially when we're fiscally constrained. So that's one question. And the other, I'm eager to get a revised report on the racial equity investments, because the list that was provided was inclusive of non-racial equity programs. And so again, I appreciate the word, but if we can't quantify it, it doesn't mean anything. So I'm just eager to get an updated list of those investments that are specific to racial and ethnic groups, not just poor and low income, which, you know, sometimes there's an intersection, sometimes there is not. But I just would love to get some more hard data around our specific racial and equity investments. Thank you.
There was a specific question there about the airport.
Yeah, there was. I think there were two questions in there in terms of, and one I don't know, council member, and certainly happy to get back to you in terms of, are there any other grants for which monies could be used? And certainly we can follow up with that.
Okay.
But I wanted to clarify in terms of we are not taking any additional grants. There's a nuance there, and I wanted to clear it up because there's been some misinformation, I think, in community about that.
Okay.
Certainly we are currently, and I'll ask my colleague here to kick me if I go out of school here, as we are in litigation and want to make sure that I am careful with my words. But as we are in litigation, and I want to clarify too, that we are in litigation to clarify a particular thing that the FAA has told us. It is not about closure or not closure of the airport. It is about a very narrow stance that the FAA has told us about the length of our grant assurance obligation. It is a very particular thing. And so we are seeking clarity on the issue of perpetuity. That is the nature of our action. And during the course of that, what we understand is that taking additional FAA grants, what we know now prospectively is that would, in fact, it likely is the stance of the FAA, create an obligation in which we would be, according to the FAA, obligated to use the airport in perpetuity for that purpose. We are not in that space. However, not all grants are equal in that space. There are other grants. There are other grants that do not impact that. There could be CDOT grants. There could be state grants. There could be other grants that come from other sources, and we would evaluate those grants on a case-by-case basis. I would turn to my colleague, my city attorney colleague. We would turn to our esteemed external counsel, and we would evaluate those grants individually to see if those were monies and sources that we could use without compromising our position.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Did I get us into trouble, Teresa?
Not yet.
I am stopping there.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wallach.
Just one question for the moment. We've obviously received a lot of emails from people in South Boulder who are very concerned with the ultimate status of the South Boulder Rec Center. Do we have any plan for dealing with that yet, or is it simply a work in progress?
Thank you for the question. I will. I know that staff has started a future of recreation center conversation that is looking at the entire recreation system. One of the things that we are excited to do as part of the long-term financial strategy is look holistically across the organization at all of the community demands and community needs with all of the underfunded needs across the organization. And so we're looking forward to bringing that forward as part of the long-term financial strategy to City Council in the spring.
Terrific, thank you.
And I will just colloquy on that question and just ask a quick one. In terms of the long-term financial strategy, we will be having community engagement around that as well, right? So that is an excellent time for people in the community to let us know what they would like us to spend city money on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Matt, did I see a question from you? Okay. Any other? And Councilmember Folkerts.
It's not necessarily a budget question, but one of the things that we're spending money on being the streetscape design at the Hill. What is the process going to look like? Is that going to come forward to council for us to look at some point, or is that just going to magically happen?
It's a good question, council member. I will toss it over to the Director of Community Vitality to respond to that question.
Good evening, Council. Chris Jones, Director of Community Vitality. Thank you so much for the question, Councilmember Folkerts. So we've not contemplated the timeline for the engagement process. We know that there are a number of things that we just need to do that don't require a big community process on redesign. It's more, how do we just take care of what's already up there? So there will be a package of things that like upgrading tree wells. It's not a comprehensive community design process just to do that work, but there is obviously, with a $1.4 million budget, we do have capacity for envisioning new things. So that will be part of the process. I don't envision a drawn out council process, but we can certainly keep you apprised of our engagement and the progress that we make there when we get to that point.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I think we are ready then to move into our public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. Can I just go straight in? All right. Then I will invite our first and only in-person speaker, Julie Van Dommelen, to come and speak to us. And I believe that folks have 3 minutes, given that we only have 3 speakers. So I will pause you at 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Julie Van Dommelen. I'm the Executive Director at EFA in Boulder, and I'm amazed that I'm the only one here for a budget hearing. It's my old mayor habits. You always come and thank your partners in human services. The city's a really important partner of EFA, both funding and just in terms of collaboration. So I just want to thank you for your continued support of EFA. I also want to share with you what we're seeing as one of the main safety net agencies in the community and its relevance to the 2025 budget. So we're still seeing high levels of need. Unfortunately, the fiscal year that we ended at the end of June, we saw the highest number of people ever coming to EFA for services. It was close to 8,500 unduplicated individuals come through our doors. The lion's share are City of Boulder residents, probably about 8,000. So about 8% of your population comes in with critical needs for stabilization to EFA. Unfortunately, we've seen a contraction in safety net funding. So over the last year, we have reduced our financial assistance available from $3.2 million to $2.7 million, so $500,000. Some of that's ARPA money, some of that's some reduction in private fundraising, and some of that is some other grants that have kind of dried up. That's led us to reduce our maximum monthly rental assistance amount from $1,000 to $800. So the safety net is less protective in the face of high rents. We have had to increase the number of emergency appointments over the last 2 months from people coming in with 10-day notices for eviction from 60 to 80 slots. It's still overwhelming out there. And when we opened our schedule in October, we schedule month to month our appointments, general appointments. We book out in 2 days. So and in the food bank in March, we were forced to shift from weekly visits to twice a month visits, just to handle the numbers of people coming through our doors and the amount of food that we had. We were running out by the end of the day. So that's the context I come to talk about the budget. So when I looked over the budget, it's pretty much flat human service fund funding. That affects not only us, but other agencies. And it erodes the level of services we can provide because our costs go up every year. Keep Families Housed has flat funding. It's a really important part of the rental assistance picture at $450,000. And that rental picture is strained, but it's a flat funding. Unfortunately, that's like good news compared to what the county. And we received funding from the county. The county's community investment pool, we were told, was going to be cut by more than 30%. We got yesterday morning our figures. F is being cut by 20%.
Julie, I'm sorry to
Okay.
cut you off. I hope that you will. I know you email us often all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
information.
So that is the
please
situation.
feel
and
free to.
I have no
Yeah,
suggestions
thank you.
except to give us more money if you can.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you being here to speak to the budget. Thank you. And we can now move to our two virtual speakers. We have Lynn Siegel and then Renee Bishore.
There's a revolving door situation going on between the airport and the jail. Someone on next door asked, "Where's the jail?" It's right by the airport. The airport is going for more housing. What we need in Boulder is not more housing. What we need is the jobs housing imbalance balanced. And that means a lot less jobs and a lot less housing because there's a disproportion too. The more housing, the more jobs, the more jobs, the more housing. Revolving door between the airport and the proposition for housing and the jail, which is where the people go once the housing is so elevated in cost that they're evicted and they go on drugs and then they go into the jail and the county's got a deficit in their budget for jail. This is, I mean, I'm not saying anything that's not stating the obvious here, but it doesn't seem that our priorities are correct, that there's a lot of wasteful spending with the city. We could have a lot of volunteer positions. And I don't want the mill levy to go up at all. I don't need any more taxes than I already have when I have to raise rent for people in my place, or everybody does. So your sales and use tax is going down because people are not paid enough, because there isn't enough. You know, we're in Gaza, we're in Lebanon now. Well, our tax dollars are spent that way. And 1.6 million that we have in Boulder could be redirected very well. We've got 1.4 million going on the University Hill streetscape, you know, and yet we're paying 1.6 to fight wars in Gaza and Lebanon, and we're going to get hit by Iran, and it's not going to be pretty, you know. This has got to stop somewhere. There's this crazed human being in Israel called Netanyahu, you know, we all know that. It's got to stop somewhere. And you need to make a resolution on that for our own fiscal responsibility with the city. The facilities and fleets are going way down over the coming years. The utilities are going way up over the coming years. I went on the sewer tour. That's a huge project. That's the interceptor loop. It's amazing what we're doing. It's very costly. And let the developers pay, not the citizens, because we're already stressed out enough as it is.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate your testimony. Next up is Renee Bishore.
Thank you so much. I don't feel I need to say this as much because I really feel like some people on council heard us, and I really appreciate that Taisha asked for a meeting with other parties to help look at the issue that's happening in North Boulder. But I will say a piece of this because I felt like I didn't have time in my 2-minute talk. So regarding the budget, I do request that before the city renews its contract with all roads, for all roads to continue to be the day center for our unhoused population, my neighbors and I, the North Boulder Alliance, request that the city do a thorough audit of how the surrounding neighborhoods have been impacted, and that the city and all roads work with the North Boulder Alliance to put in place better practices to limit its impact on the neighborhood. I think that they care a great deal about the people that they serve. And I just need to also know and see that the community is also important. We have to have a healthy community surrounding all roads. We are really starting to develop into a beautiful mixed use neighborhood in North Boulder. There's more housing coming in, more businesses coming in. Finally, the Armory is going to have some businesses on that corner. And I think it's really important that we have a vital North Boulder. If we want more tax dollars coming into the community, we need to make sure that that business area stays vibrant. I really hope that we get a micro police station on Broadway. I think that that would help keep crime down a lot. And we will have crime data for council in the next couple of months. We're still looking at that. I'm hearing that all roads is being told that crime is down, but the data that we have from the police department is not showing that. I think the police department is doing a fantastic job. I don't think just the police alone can solve this problem. And I appreciate council meeting with our group. And Taisha, thank you so much for pressing that we meet sooner than later. And thank you all for your service. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. With no more speakers, the public hearing is now closed, and I would invite first any other clarifying questions from council. All good? Okay. Then I will open for comments, and whoever would like to kick that off.
Come on now.
All right.
I guess it's time
Matt.
to gush. First, I commend. Mark's got a party over here. First, I just want to say thank you guys, mostly for working in a really hard economic environment. It's always great when the money's falling from trees and we can say yes to everybody's needs. Certainly, I love that opportunity as a council member to be able to meet everyone's needs. So I understand it's hard, and certainly to all the department heads that are here tonight, appreciate the hard work to make it work in a constrained environment. With that said, it's still important to note there are still a lot of needs that are out there, a lot of harm still being done because we cannot meet some of those needs of people. So we need to recognize that, and hopefully that, as our revenues improve and our financial position improves, we can start to meet those needs at a greater capacity as those needs continue to grow. So I'm looking forward to those opportunities, and I think there was some really creative budgeting. One thing I'll call out is that 1.4 million over with Community Vitality from the Hill, that sort of property acquisition, using that for beautification and investments. That creative environment usually comes out of semi-austere times. So thanks for everyone for putting that all together. So a lot of great work putting this together, and looking forward to how we move forward with ATBs going forward, and hopefully our economic conditions improve and we can get back to some bigger and stronger investments in our community. So thank you all for the great work.
Thank you. Others? Yes, Mark.
I also want to jump in on the thank you bandwagon. I know how much time and effort has gone into this budget through my participation on Financial Strategies Committee. It's clear that this has been a Herculean task and making difficult choices up and down the line. And so I think there's been a lot of wisdom involved in the choices made, and I really support what you've done. And I look forward to those future conversations where we can hopefully try to cover the shortfalls that we've experienced to date, and deal with some of the holes in our budget, and try to help some of the people we would like to help more but cannot this year. And so thank you very much.
Did I see your hand go up, Taisha? All right, go for it.
Thank you. I want to echo just the comments around this Herculean effort. I mean, it goes without saying, but I just am grateful as well. The only thing that I am still wondering about is just the disparity study. Just recognizing that that's a major opportunity to really think about who gets the opportunity to work with our city. And just wanted to, it was actually in the questions, I just missed it in my checklist of things. But just the status of that, and will we have that information, sooner, before we have to finalize this budget?
We have received the disparity study, as I don't know if everyone knows. We have joined, we have partnered with Boulder County and have contracted with an external partner to do a disparity study to really look at the way the city can use its power of purchasing and how it is doing well or frankly not well in terms of its power. We have received an initial report. We are digesting that right now, and we are hoping that we will be able to share that out more publicly. I know that we are working on timing of that and working with that in conjunction with the county. I don't know right now the timing of that, but we're hoping that plan should come out soon, and I'm happy to follow up with you, council members, on when that is. But we can preview something that probably is not a surprise to anybody, but we do have disparities in our purchasing, and the benefit of being able to do a disparity study, which is why we called for it, is that this enables us to take affirmative actions to address that. And so actually excited to have this tool at our disposal, and so you will be hearing more about that in the very near future.
Awesome, thank you. And then just another area where I'm hopeful that to get more budget information and synergies is just around research and evaluation. So since every department does it differently, I know it makes it that much more challenging to get our numbers together. But going back to the data requests that I made earlier and just some of the challenges in getting that data. And I don't know if there's a way to code it as we move forward. I know we have the fiscal note coming, so there's a couple of different opportunities to address that. But I do have a concern around how much money we spend on research and evaluation, both from a qualitative and quantitative perspective, especially since numerous memos make reference to our qualitative efforts. And so just knowing that, how much we spend on that, who are the people administering that, because we do know it matters who asks the question, who administers the surveys, et cetera. And so I'm just really eager to get some more information around that, and hopefully make the case to have a staff role around that, right? I mean, but I can't make the case until we have those kind of numbers. So that was just another area that, some of it's here and then some of it's there and then some of it's in consultant, but not all of it. And also who funds it, right? Because some of our federal grants come with some money for research, but then some doesn't. And so similarly, how much is restricted that we are required to do and are being compensated for versus what we need to get forward. Because, as Renee asked for a study, okay, well, what are we already studying? What is our research agenda for the year? I just didn't get an idea from the budget information that was available. What are the research agendas for the year? What are the big questions that we're trying to solve? Is there more interdepartmental collaboration and cooperation to bring down some of the cost, as well as just what I call historically marginalized fatigue? For those of us who haven't been engaged, now we get 8 different opportunities during the middle of the day to come to some meeting, and that's not inclusion in the ways that we're trying to get there. So again, commending our staff for trying to move around and create things in the evening, but then that's work for them, right? Or on the weekends. And so just am eager to get some more information around the research and evaluation, as well as the upcoming fiscal note. And just want to make sure if there's anything else, disparity study. Oh, and then lastly, which I think we're going to be talking about later, but what can we do in our processes to find more synergies and opportunities to collaborate with the county so that we're not in the position where we are now, where we're finding about, these larger shortcomings, on their side in the, this is information I think all of us could have benefited from earlier in the process. And so just trying to figure out, are there ways that we can be in tandem with the county as they are also doing their budgeting process? I don't know, but I just don't want to be in a position where we have to send, the potential of a letter. You know how I feel about that. So if we can identify that, I would be very, very, very excited and happy to be a part of that. So thank you.
Okay, and I see Aaron online, and then we'll go to Ryan.
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. I'll be quick because I can't speak very well, but just wanted to echo the thanks and praise for the amazing work on the budget this year. As I went through the details, I was really impressed by how it's moving the city organization forward and also taking into account council priorities and advancing all of those. So huge thanks for that. I spent some time delving into the new arts fund, and so thanks to city staff who met with me and walked me through some of that. I was glad to see that with that new dedicated arts tax that we're going to be devoting more than 50% extra to grants for community organizations, which is exciting, but also appreciate how we're positioning ourselves for the adoption of the update to the cultural plan in 2025, and then we'll reorient and devote resources in future years based on that. And then just the one other thing is that, Mary, appreciate the constant refrain of the constraint, and I think you all did a great job of working within those constraints. But we'll note that there were some real one-time opportunities with the fund balances, and as I do every year, really want to thank and congratulate you for making really good one-time use out of those additional fund balance availability because of unspent funds and things like that, and appreciate how you were able to advance some really key priorities that some of which were previously unfunded by making use of those resources. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And next up is Ryan.
I'm going to join the chorus and just say a few things towards why I think this is a great budget and I support it. First, I think one reason it's making sense to people is that the strategic plan for 2024 to 26 that Nuria, you have developed and has been underdeveloped for quite some time lays a groundwork for the policy basis for this, and also the move towards greater outcome orientation, which is still in process, but we're making a lot of progress on. I think those plus, just as you had pointed out, Nuria, that one of the approaches here is just over time the budget is reflected in the feedback that we hear. I think the combination of those things explain why there's not a ton of questions right now, and I think that's really great. I also have to call out, there's some departments that are creating revenue from external sources that deserve, I think, a little bit of recognition. Transportation is not the only one, but it's one of them. They are creating leverage. 500% of the funds they're often getting through projects. They're getting from the feds. We put in $1 million, we get $5 million from that. I also understand. Correct me if this is wrong, but I think the $22 million federal grant we received not a year ago is maybe for Safe Streets is the largest grant the city's ever received, as far as I've heard. You could fact check that, but I think that's right. And one of the things it tells me is that sometimes it takes being really bold and doing really qualitative things that are a good idea to attract money, and that's exciting. What we've already done and what's ahead of us in that field. And then I just would also acknowledge some things others have said on that we are experiencing constraints that are causing pain and suffering. Some of those are existing. We also have headwinds coming at us, climate and other headwinds. And so this long-term financial strategies committee and the work is going to be really important for us over the coming year or so to dig more into and think about ways to create greater financial resilience, productivity. And I'm hopeful that our colleagues can all get engaged in that. And this is hopefully a way to create, to the extent that folks would like to see things tracked or done in ways that we don't have categories for, that might be a good chance for that. So lots to do on that kind of bigger picture, but for now I'm very happy and thankful for all of your diligent work.
All right, Lauren.
Thank you. I appreciated the budget that was brought forward. I do hope to see council getting involved earlier in the process and spreading the budget sort of review and involvement throughout the year a little bit more. Maybe like we do with the community connectors. I don't know exactly what the format looks like, but I think this is such a big lift for staff, but it's also a big lift for us to deeply understand this budget. And I think that I personally would like to have more time to really get more involved in understanding it better throughout the year as it evolves. This budget definitely, and some of the income portions of it certainly frame our need for a long-term financial strategy, and I look forward to the work on that progressing and being involved with that. There are a number, as Matt said, of unfunded needs in our community, but sort of to Taisha's point, in order to help make decisions, I would really, to help us make council decisions moving forward, I would really like to see a consolidated research and development position or something to make it so that there is a more unified way in which departments go about that and bring that information forward to us. I think a staff role is a great idea, but I'm open to other ways that we do that. And then my main comment on the budget itself is just that I would like to see us continue to push forward to continue to prioritize more proactive measures and not reactive measures. As we all know, an ounce of prevention and a pound of cure, and however that saying goes. The more that we can make sure that we're budgeting to try and make it so that the needs of tomorrow are less than the needs of today. Thank you.
And Tina.
Yeah, thanks again for all this work and all the time on the budget, as well as just working with us for understanding. And some of the things I continue to be interested in are, first of all, just looking at how the city of Boulder is staffed and managed compared to other similar sized municipalities, and just understanding what other structures there are and how other people are prioritizing their personnel. I think those kinds of comparisons are interesting. We're of course unique and have a unique set of needs, especially with our open space, but I'd be curious nonetheless. I'm also interested in trying to better map our needs with what the county can provide and what they can't provide. I know this is a recurrent theme. It is difficult though, because on the almost 1 year I've been in council, it's a little bit like playing ping pong on mental health and also on some of the homeless services. It's kind of like, well, that's okay, the county will do that, so then I don't, well, then we shouldn't do a tax for mental health, but they're going to do it. Oh no, they're not going to do a tax. So at some point, I think we're going to have to figure out how to commit to what we need to provide and what they're going to provide. I know that is a really, really tall order, and certainly won't be happening next week. The other piece is looking into just our grants in general, and whether we can think about taking the same perspective of outcome-based budgeting to outcome-based granting. And I'm sure that's a shared value, but we do a tremendous amount in granting. And it's a little bit tricky to wade through when you're going through the budget. And we are supporting a lot of wonderful organizations, but when we get into a constrained environment, these outcome-based exercises will make those difficult decisions that much easier. And I think that might be good over time. So those are the only things that I look forward to as we, iterate this budget and continue to adjust it. Again, I appreciate all of this work tremendously. It's been really helpful.
Thank you. And I will finish off the effusive praise in this conversation. And I just want to note the structure that you all have set up in only a few years during a global pandemic is really remarkable. It will likely be beyond my time on council to see this work come to its full fruition, but I can see the vision that's guiding this work, and it will be transformational. You've built a foundation for an entirely new way of prioritizing our resources in only 3 years. And I just look at all the staff here. I just want to thank you all so much. This is amazing, and there is absolutely no way we can fully convey how important the work you've done is to the future of this community. So thank you to each and every one of you who are here tonight. You're creating a clear and measurable focus on sustainability, equity, and resilience. You're aligning city spending with the citywide strategic plan, and you're focusing on outcomes. I appreciate the way that this process is already for the 2025 budget, leading us to name just a few things: to additional funding for broader engagement, for continuing the Community Connectors program, for increased rental assistance, for increased funding to the Police Monitor's Office, and immigration legal assistance, and that's just a few. I don't support everything in here, but I fully support the transformation toward using our values and our connections to people in the community to inform our spending and what we're doing, and beginning to look at outcomes to make informed future decisions. The broader strategy work, I just want to lift that up a moment for the folks who are still listening in the community. This broader strategy work we're doing on this council is really crucial to propelling this budget work forward. The long-term financial strategy that we've referenced, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, and our internal citywide strategic plan are all going to partner to make this budget work shine in the coming years and decades. And I encourage everybody in the community to weigh in during these other engagement opportunities, because they will drive future budgets. And just to speak a little bit to the community about this partnership that we are in trying to meet the needs of folks in our community. If you've been following the budget, you know how important sales tax is to our city's budget and to our ability to fund all these programs. So please consider buying local. Sales tax props up our city services like parks and recreation, our recreation centers that folks have been asking us about, and it also keeps our unique small businesses going. And if your financial and personal and professional situations allow it, please consider giving your time and money to the outstanding local nonprofits that fill the gaps in our arts and culture, in our climate, and our human services, and all kinds of other programming. The city, as you are seeing and following this budget, cannot do everything with our current budget. And our community partners really do need more support, as we heard tonight from Julie Van Dommelen at EFA, as our budget flattens and we have more gaps to fill. So please consider partnering with us in some of this work too. We cannot do everything as much as we would like to. We really need some support, and please weigh in on this long-term financial strategy and the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan. They will be really important places to make your voices heard in terms of what the city should be spending its money on going forward. So thank you for letting me give that little PSA as well. I appreciate it. Just thank you for all this work.
If I may, Mayor Pro Tem, just thank you for the kudos. It really is the staff here and the staff that you see before you. The departments have worked tremendously to do that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you, Council, because it is your comments, your inquiries, your questions push us in ways that we mostly like. And I mean that a little tongue in cheek, right? Your inquiries drive us to really think deeply about our budget. We know that there are a lot of needs out there that we cannot meet. We know that you get a lot of that in community, that the push that community drives generally comes to you directly. And it is frustrating to us all when we know that we cannot achieve all the expectations that community is looking to us to fill. And so we appreciate that you are at the forefront of a lot of that frustration with community. And we are trying very hard, to Lauren's point, to think about proactive strategies. And that is what, frankly, the long-term financial strategies is aimed to do. We are so thankful that you lifted that up as a council priority, so that in the future, we do not find ourselves in as much of a situation thinking about deferred maintenance needs and programmatic needs that have not been met in the past. And so I just want to thank you all for the support and for the bravery and the courage and the discipline to say this is the time to really think about our financial situation in ways that are deep and meaningful and sustainable. And so just appreciate that.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Do we want to do this one at a time or all together?
One at a time.
Oh, you better have a cup of coffee.
Somebody get me some
You
candy.
gotta love it. We get to hear your wonderful voice.
Okay. Consideration of the following items relating to the 2025 budget. Introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order, published by title only. Ordinance 8660, adopting a budget for the city of Boulder, Colorado for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2025 and ending on the last day of December 2025, and setting forth related details. Do we want to vote on that first, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
I need
Anybody
a
want a
second.
second?
Second.
All right. And all of these are roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Thank
All
you.
right.
We'll start the roll call for ordinance 8660 with Councilmember Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
Yes, indeed.
Adams.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
And Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Ordinance 8660 is hereby approved on first reading.
Moving right along. Introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order, published by title only. Ordinance 8661, establishing the 2024 City of Boulder property tax mill levies, which are to be collected by the County of Boulder, State of Boulder, within the City of Boulder in 2025, for payment of expenditures by the City of Boulder, County of Boulder, State of Colorado, and setting forth related details.
Thank you, sir.
And I think you had said the first one, the state of Boulder, just city of Boulder, right? Okay, yeah. Well, city of Boulder and then county of Boulder, state of, anyway, yes.
Second.
Thank you. We'll start this vote for ordinance 8661 with Councilmember Shuhart.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
And Marquis.
Yes.
Ordinance 8661 is hereby approved on first reading.
Next, introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order, published by title only. Ordinance 8662, appropriating money to defray expenses and liabilities of the City of Boulder, Colorado, for the 2025 fiscal year of the City of Boulder, commencing on the first day of January 2025 and ending on the last day of December 2025, and setting forth related details.
Second.
Tag team.
Start the roll call, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll start the roll call for 8662 with Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
And Shuhart.
Yes.
Ordinance 8662 is hereby approved as the previous three with a vote to 8-0.
And for those still listening at home, introduction, first reading, and consideration of a motion to order, published by title only, Ordinance 8656, amending section 3-8-3, tax imposed on non-residential and residential development, section 3-20-2, imposition and rate of tax, and chapter 4-20, fees, BRC 1981, changing certain fees and taxes and setting forth related details.
Second. We can go ahead with the roll call.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We'll start the roll call for ordinance 8656 with Councilmember Wallet.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
And Shuhard.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Yes.
Ordinance 8656 is hereby approved on first reading with a vote of 8-0.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. And kudos to Mark for just reading what felt like a dissertation there. So nice job. And thank you, staff, for the presentation and discussion. And thank you for everybody who joined us, too. Thank you, Councilmember Folkerts. I think we are ready now to move on to our next item.
Look at this exodus. It's like the third inning of a Rockies game. Like, what's going on here?
All right, we're all set.
All right, thank you. Next on tonight's agenda is item number 8, matters from the mayor and members of council. 8A is the discussion on whether to hold the November 14th special meeting and joint meeting with the planning board in person. This meeting was converted from a study session.
Thank you so much. Aaron, I think you were the very first person to bring this up. And CAC, would you like to say a few words, or would you like me to just wrap it up for people?
No, I can kick it off if you don't mind. Thanks, Nicole. Just that generally our study sessions that are converted to special meetings are remote, but this is our kickoff with the planning board of the BBCP process. We'll be working on this together with them for almost 2 years, and I thought it might be nice to do that in person so we can have a little face-to-face contact, maybe get to know planning board members you don't know yet, and could help be a good beginning for the whole long BBCP process, but subject to the will of council, of course.
Thank you. And does anybody have any questions or comments about this? Or otherwise, I'll just go straight to a show of hands. Yes, Matt.
My only question would be how would this be material or substantively different than the meeting we just had with planning board? I just want to know that we have like substantively different outcomes, because not much time has been between those. So I'm just curious what the plan is there.
Yeah, so the topic is, I think it's actually the needs assessment, talking about the, oh, I'm sorry.
Just
yes.
a clarification,
Yeah.
this is about Area 3, not the comp plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. But the beginning of a series of discussions around comp plan related items, since the Area 3 is being considered as part of the updated comp plan.
Does that, does that clarify it, or? Okay, yeah, I saw Brad walk up, but I think you're good, Brad. Thank you. Okay, can I get a show of hands for folks who are okay with making this an in-person meeting? Okay, I think that's everybody, so I think we should be okay, and just thank you to staff for being willing to do another extra in-person meeting. We appreciate you.
Definitely.
All right, we can go to our next item then.
Yes, ma'am. Our next item is item 8B, and it is the discussion on drafting a letter to Boulder County regarding the proposed 2025 budget cuts.
Thank you. And Matt and Mark, you two kind of brought this forward, so I will pass it over to you to summarize for us.
Appreciate it. I'll start and let Mark fill in some color commentary as he's good at. What this asks between the two of us, just ask clarifying questions. And Taisha kind of touched on this, so did Tina. There's a symbiosis between the work that we in the county do and these issues that we're facing are regional, yet our budgets are separate, but the impacts of those budgets are not separate. And so I think there's just been we're struggling to find those common grounds on how we can jointly invest in the things that we want to achieve in. And so we're just at a disconnect a little bit, and plus we're just missing some information. And so this is really just to understand what these proposed budget cuts are and how they're going to impact our city partners, and most importantly, how they're going to impact our community, and then perhaps what harm is that going to do to our community for folks who are maybe expecting to have some level of services available to them, and then may all of a sudden show up and not have them. We just heard from our partners at EFA that they're going to get a 20% cut to their community grant program. All Roads looks like they're going to get a 30% cut. And this may impact the very things that we've established in partnership, like the day service center, our night shelter and beds, as we're going into the winter. So we would just like to know what these cuts are, and then to Mark's point, what are the areas that maybe we have partnership with them that maybe we would need to could or potentially look at using to offset some of that, so that some of our most vulnerable in our community are not left high and dry, as some of these cuts may lead to. So it's not butting into their budget. If they want to go fix a bridge in unincorporated Boulder County, go have at it. Neither here nor there. But this sort of funding with our partners and service providers is one of those things where kind of demands some more clear engagement between these elected bodies, so that we can have some clear understandings about what our partnerships are and our shared funding for those things. So that's what their request is. I know that Councilmember Wallach and Elizabeth Crow and HHS are starting to perhaps work on a little bit of just figuring out what those questions might be, since HHS has probably a good core understanding of what those pieces are. And so really our ask of you guys is, would you like to have staff draft a letter that would ask these sort of foundational questions to understand impact and harm and offsets? And then that could come to them, and hopefully they'd be able to respond to that, and then we'd have a better idea of what we're looking at here and what our partners are looking at going forward. So that's our ask in terms of mostly a not a 5, I presume, would be what we're asking for. So, Mark, do you have anything else to add?
Not really very much. I think you've covered the waterfront. There's a lot of concern over the depth of some of these cuts to core social service providers. The impacts are going to be very, very severe, and we need to have a better understanding of what the county is thinking about. We need to have a better understanding of whether there is anything we can do cooperatively to soften these blows, because when you start talking about 20% cuts at EFA, that is going right to the bottom line of harming people who are most economically vulnerable, who are most vulnerable to evictions, who require food. This is a very clear threat to a number of people in the community, and I don't think that there's been a lot of discussion between the county and the city along these lines and on this topic, and we would like to have that conversation take place.
Thanks so much for the summary. I saw a few hands for questions or comments. Tina, Taisha, Lauren. If anybody else has things, just raise your hand and I'll add you to my list.
Yeah, and this might be a question for the two of you, and it might be a question for staff. If there's a way we can just get clarity around the alternative sentencing facility at the same time, or that could be just an information item from staff. I don't know where we are with that particular piece either.
I don't have an issue. It's a completely different
Different.
pot of money. So, and it's a different thing.
Okay.
So I think that's a fair question, because that too is another question to ask. But maybe, so I would defer to staff on how to differentiate that. This was really focused on that particular grant program.
And that's fine if it's out of scope. That was just a question.
Yeah,
So
that's a good
we
question
can
to ask.
address that differently.
Having a new facility with no money to run it is also a concern.
I think, I think it's a great question and deserves an answer, but it may be a little out of scope for what we're trying to do right now, which is not an omnibus complaint against the county, simply a very focused set of concerns that we want to discuss with the county. Good question.
All right. Thank you. And Taisha.
Thank you. So I I also just want to lift up that, I want to honor that staff have met with, county and city staff have been meeting with each other for months and have been in communication. And I just refer back to Kurt's response around some of the questions that we had, and he indicated that those conversations were happening. I think what we're saying here is that we are now recognizing and acknowledging that we need a conversation between city council members and county commissioners around this. So I'm fine for where we stand right now in the request to get some additional information for us, but I don't want it to seem as if, the county has been trying to hide information, because I do believe this information has been shared across staff to staff conversations. Unfortunately, when we got the report, that specific grain size of information wasn't necessarily communicated back to us. So I just want to honor that there are different expectations that we're asking, and potentially different processes and protocols that we're asking to create more synergies that are now required because of some of the cuts that are being anticipated. So I just wanted to clarify there and agree that at this point, it would be helpful to get that explicit information on the programs that the city supports or relies on prior to us making final decisions about our budget. And also, again, lifting up the minimum wage conversation takes on a different resonance when we see those types of cuts as well coming from somewhere else, and recognizing our safety net isn't going to cut it. No pun intended at all there. So I just wanted to lift that up, and again, just honor that we are, not y'all are messing up, but more so we need to do things differently based on the context that we're living in now. Thank you.
Just a point of clarifier, this isn't isolated, and we experienced this a little bit last year when there were big cuts to the public health department. And that was sort of done at the 11th hour. We had already done our budgeting, and it really hurt services.
Okay.
So we were in the process of talking about, can we look at a behavioral health tax to support those critical needs, not knowing that they were looking to cut their public health department substantially. So it's a systemic thing about the timing when we're doing budgets, and how we're actually being transparent about the long-term planning about those symbiotic partnerships, and they're just working in a vacuum even though the harm is shared. And so it isn't a first time, and so we're trying to maybe start to get ahead of that and say, wave our hands, say, hey, whoa, we need to think about a different way of doing things.
Right. So this came up last year, though, and we didn't make any changes to the process of how we do budgeting as it relates to the city representative. I can honor even just last year.
Team's working on it, I hear.
Okay, so
Sound just came back on for me.
who said that?
Aaron up here.
We'll start with this.
Roaming Okay. Did you have anything more, or is that you did you make it through? Okay.
You know, I also just want to reflect back on the homelessness joint meeting that we had and how wonderful that was. And I just, again, I'm like, wait, if there were going to be budget things like that, would have been a really great time. So again, I love that process of having that joint meeting and maybe even scheduling in advance, knowing that we are going to need to have more sessions and conversations with each other. And having a fiscal component to that would be really, really helpful. And not just a whole bunch of presentations, but like we have those in advance and then we get there and we talk to each other. So I'm really hopeful. All right, now that we have the mic back, it goes to Lauren.
Thank you. I'm hoping that this letter, well, so there's the implications that we have to deal with, but I'm also getting a lot of questions from community around why this is happening, which is not something that I feel like I can sufficiently answer. And so it might be I mean, we can't force them to do anything, but it would be in their best interest, I think, to try and also communicate with us in a little more detail why these cuts are deemed necessary. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. And I would just plus one, some Taisha's comments, especially around just noting that staff have been having these conversations with county staff. And I think this just feeds into, you know, exactly what you were saying and what we've been saying in some of the budget, that it would be nice for us to have a little bit of engagement earlier in the budget process too, moving forward. But I think I'm generally hearing support for sending a letter to the county, just asking for more information on what the Boulder County cuts are, and when they have it, I think they're still working on their budget too, and then understanding how the cuts will impact our partners in the city as well as our own city services. If that sounds good to you all, please just raise your hands if you are interested in that type of letter. Oh, yes, yeah. Sorry, Nuria's got her.
Nope, I
mic on.
just wanted to say, I think we have clarity, and as I see the hands raised, I just wanted to point out, we certainly do speak with our county partners. I don't know, they just sent notifications out to providers this week or recently, so I do not know that we would have known what the extent of those cuts would have been prior to now. Because their budget cycle is different. And so while certainly we will continue to work with our partners to see how we can synchronize is the wrong word, but better perhaps inform each other earlier of things that may impact each other, because I think it goes both ways, to be fair. I think there are times in which they may not know what that's going to look like because they have not made their decisions yet. And I do not know, to the comment of whether or not we'll have that information prior to our next budget hearing. I do not know when we will receive those answers, as they have just sent those notifications out. We are actually looking for, they generally post the 2025 awards for the Community Grants Partnership online. We're looking to see what that will look like, and we will certainly ask for if we can get a list of those awardees so that we can see which programs may have an impact to us in the city. But certainly we hear you, and we will follow up on that request.
Great, thank you. And then you all have what you need from us on that. Okay. Oh. Okay, Matt is asking about the timing of when we think that letter may get out.
I believe we can get to work on that letter and send it out within a matter of days.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone else have any additional comments or information tonight? Well, I think we're done with this item, unless you have something more on it. Yeah. Yep.
All right. So I wanted to thank the team for putting the community cultural grants on that in our list. I had an opportunity to go through those and realized, one, that we're going to be updating that community cultural plan, and so it would just be helpful. Like, it was helpful to see who got the grants, but I realized in advance of us updating that plan, if there was going to be an opportunity for any kind of outcomes report or just on the many goals that had been identified in the initial plan. So that was just a question around that. But again, just really grateful for the allocations to those organizations. And again, there was a mention of racial and ethnic or race and ethnicity and racial equity in that plan, but it wasn't clear again how those investments were made. And so I did look through and saw, the Jaipur Lit Festival, the Eco Arts Connection, the Samba School, but again, just wasn't clear on. So it was wonderful to see it, but it also was on the lower grant tiers. And so again, it was just one of those things of how are we making those investments and just getting some more clarity around the monitoring and tracking and reporting as it relates to that. It was also wonderful to see, I was looking in the websites and there were, there's a dance group that includes people with disabilities. And so again, just recognizing that our equity commitments are beyond race and ethnicity and also often at the intersection of those. So again, just wanted to lift up the opportunity to expand the role of artists in the work that we're doing, not just in the design phase and the incredible work that's happening in the civic area, but the opportunity to engage at the implementation and even the evaluation. Like, there's a whole arts-based evaluation where you're using poetry and just other ways beyond surveys and focus groups and some of the more traditional ways that, again, useful but not always representative of the full community's input. And so again, just wanted to lift that up as in an appreciation and eager to hear more before we do an update on just the impacts, because there was quite a few meaningful measures and metrics identified in that plan, and it would be very helpful to get an update. So thank you.
Yes, Aaron.
Just wanted to thank you, Nicole, for stepping up and running a great meeting that's poised to end very, very early. So thank you for that.
Oh, Aaron, every time you say something like that, something happens. So no, I appreciate it though. Thank you. And I hope join everyone else and hope that you feel better soon. Tina?
Is this working? Yeah. Just two really quick things. I was able to join several colleagues to go to the renter meeting at the public library. And I really wanted to commend staff, and particularly Megs, who just did an outstanding job. And I was so impressed. I did. It's always neat when you see another side to someone and their skill set, and it was just terrific. And the second thing is I was really excited to be at the swearing in of our chief of police, Redfern. I'm glad he's here, and I'm glad that we now have some stability in the police department. I think we can look forward to some wonderful things coming out of there as we pursue the reimagined policing plan.
Thank you. I agree. I was also at the Runner Forum, and I especially want to thank Megs. She wasn't the only person there, but I watched her facilitate. She was incredible. So thank you, Megs. Okay, I have a rose, a thorn, and a bud. My rose, so this is a good thing. Last week, the police launched a new crash dashboard, or at least updated it, that now has new transparency into deaths and serious injuries, which is a term of art or a method of art that's really important for safe streets. Really, this is a great development. There will be refinements on this crash dashboard as we continue to go forward, but it's overall super. There's also tons of enhancements happening around town right now in the safe streets that are in the streets that are moving us towards root cause solutions to make the city more efficient and accessible. Based on Baseline East of Foothills, Aurora and Evans, Colorado and 33rd, Iris and 15th. The team is very hard at work. And just more generally on my rows, our transportation mobility team is leading the pack in the U.S. We have 10 times better outcomes than other U.S. towns. So that's my rose. Thorn. Last Friday, Jennifer Newman was the 5th person to be killed in and around our streets. She was struck by a driver of a motor vehicle, Broadway and Riley. She was 38 years old. It's the 22nd about the 22nd death or serious injury in our system before closing the third quarter. And since that, the Denver Post has reported that statewide trends are worsening. Record-setting 136 people have been killed, up 77% since 2018 and 160% since the last decade. And that's people walking and in crosswalks. My bud is what I'm looking forward to. Boulder is a real leader, and I am proud and grateful to be a part of a team that is. And being part of being a leader is having a growth mindset, including around issues that are chronic, that are set by inertia, that have systems issues. And my bud is that I do detect a real acceleration in what we are doing, what the team is doing. And I think some of that is part of the discussion we had about the budget and how we now have an outcomes-based budget that includes focus on safe streets with integration across teams. And I'm just super excited about the work ahead and the acceleration that I've detected. And I'm really enthusiastic about what I know the team of the city can do when they have city council's support. That's it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to gavel really fast. But with no more items on our agenda, I will close the meeting at 8:39 p.m.